Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Surprise, we're back. It's been a little bit of Doug has not been in Africa for well over a year. We have just had a bit of a time getting our schedules to sync up. But here we are. We're back. We're doing stuff. Doug, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Matt. How are you?
Oh, not so bad. Not so bad. You're looking a little fuzzier than the last time we saw you.
Yeah, I'm about to about to shave the fuzzy off here. It's uh, it's been on there for almost 8-10 months just because I've been too lazy to shave. So my skin's starting to get a little itchy and drying out. So I guess that's old more than anything else. But next time you see me, you may not be there.
Well, I mean, that happens. I hear it'll grow back. It's a bit of a
Yeah, it grows back everywhere but here. I haven't figured that one out yet, but I'd sure appreciate getting somebody giving us an idea how to get it to grow back.
I hear it just gets lazy and doesn't want to make the climb all the way to the top. That's what somebody told me once.
Here I was trying to say it's a struggle to get it through all that intelligent gray matter, but maybe it's the reverse.
You know what? I feel that it's bad for my inheritance if I finish the thought I just had. So we'll just move forward from there.
Yeah, just remember, this could be yours too.
I'm doing okay right
You're
now.
doing great.
I think I'm doing okay. It's life's like you're always wearing your hat. You covering up a bald spot? No, I'm covering up a six head.
There you go.
I could show a movie on this thing, but it's all moving back in unison so far. So that's it's an organized retreat, not just everybody, every man for himself. All right, so enough about our hairlines. So when last we chatted, well over a year ago, you're on your way to Africa. Did you find a hockey rink in Africa?
As a matter of fact, I did. Well, I could go anywhere in the world, and I seem to manage to find a hockey rink. Yeah, not a whole lot of them, though. You really got to look. I found a hockey rink in Cape Town.
Okay.
Don't know if they get a chance to visit it, or did you just... But I found the rink.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, I mean, that just goes to show you when it's hot, hockey's a good sport to play because it's a very cold building.
Yes, it is.
So we have that going for us. Well, we've had one or two hockey games happen since we last chatted. We've had a whole season and a half, really, because life kind of spiraled out of control on everybody. And it is Matt from Canada. It's Cruising with Kayfabe. Thanks for joining us. There's Josh out in North Carolina joining us. Thanks, buddy, for tuning in. I appreciate it, as Enforcing the Fundamentals is back on the At the Inn Studios network. We're sort of ramping them up. So you did the Africa trip. We've seen a bit of hockey going on. You said something interesting to me the other day when you were down here for a visit. Recently, you saw what might be your favorite series in hockey ever.
Yeah, actually, it really was. As far as enjoying and being into it, and having a lot involved in it, and I mean, there's obvious politics, but every international something, there's some sort of politics involved. But I think
that was just bad timing for that, really. I mean, that was just unfortunate.
It would have been bad time if we'd have lost.
we wouldn't have lived that one down. For those of you that may not remember, maybe a little clueless, shortly before the tournament began, somebody down in America kicked up a bit of a hornet's nest, said some things that have not gone away yet and caused a lot of issues, causing ongoing issues between the countries. And as Canadians, we have banded together. We are even including Quebec in this one and getting along nicely. But we did not put our best foot forward, in my opinion, where we booed the national anthem. It is not strictly hockey either. We have done this in professional wrestling as well, where the American anthem got booed a couple weeks later at a pay-per-view in Toronto. So it's not the best look for us. It has sort of inflamed some of our non-political friends down south that we like. Yeah, it was. I get
I,
it. I don't disagree with it. Just
I,
yeah, we not a good look.
there's things that we can be certainly not in favor with the political situations, but these are sporting showcases, whether an
Mhm.
NHL game or whatever it is, and there's every athlete there is put a whole lot into getting to that game, years and years and years, and they represent a country, and but they represent themselves more. I was a little shocked, to be perfectly honest with you,
Mhm.
when I heard all the booing. I mean, we're I don't like to use the word completely classless, but I thought it was beneath us
Mhm.
as sport enthusiasts to to boo athletes trying to perform at the top of their level because of a political situation that really they can't
Mhm.
control, we can't control. We're trying to, learn to live with, and I think we have a whole lot of. I have a whole lot of friends, and I've played a whole lot of hockey in the States,
Mhm.
and I've had a whole lot of kids from the States come up to play hockey for me. You know, and I I didn't think that it was right that we should take that particular action. And I hope that we'll understand that those athletes are individuals. They're uh, they're standing, with their country, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're standing for their country with specific political decisions
Mhm.
to be made. So, for every athlete that's a U.S. athlete playing in a Canadian building that got booed, please remember it's not you that we were booing.
No,
It
it really wasn't. It wasn't them. It wasn't anybody on the team. It's not their citizens. It's really a very small group of people, and it just came along where our collective ass was very harshly chapped. I don't think it wasn't a good look for us. As cruising with kayfabe, Josh is pointing out here, the Boston fans were just as poor sports. Yeah, I mean it is what it is. It was fresh. It's not the best sportsmanship look. It's not the classiest look. I agree with you. We probably should have risen above that a little bit, but collectively as a country, we're pissed. We're
yeah,
hurt. We're
we
pissed, and
should be.
we need a new friend.
We
Um,
should be. We need more friends in the United States to maybe find a way to work our way through
mhm,
these difficult times. And I mean, that's going to be, I think, and I'm not a political person, but that's going to be the road to the successes, the friends that we do have,
mhm.
and we should be well aware that we do have millions of friends there. So
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and
we have a few that aren't. That's unfortunately the few that aren't
I
are
mean it.
exercising their rights under their flag, and maybe things will change. Could
I
be a
mean, as
long
this is
haul.
all going on, like I've just got back from seeing a couple hundred of my American friends, hanging out for 4 days. I mean, we none of us consciously were discussing politics.
Hmm.
The incident at the tournament sort of happened after I had returned, but I speak to my American friends on a daily basis, um, and I know a lot of them not happy about the situation either. I've actually had some people that were supporters of that ideology early on go, oh, we might have fucked up. But it has nothing to do with the athletes, and it has nothing to do with the anger politically. But man, was that not a good look for us?
Mm.
Like the booing
No,
of the athlete was
no.
just
You know what, watched that game on TV shortly thereafter, and I was actually pretty shocked. And then I saw the same thing happen in Vancouver with a lower tone to it, but it
Mhm.
happened. And I'm continuing to see it, that it's getting sort of less and less, but I'm continuing to see it. There are people who are very angry, the political situation has upset their lives, and it might have been their lives that they've been
Mhm.
working for 30 or 40 years. And I can certainly understand being upset, but how are we going to deal with it has to be a Canadian way.
Mhm.
And
I mean, we got to have a little bit of faith that the checks and balances are going to work out as
yep,
well with whatever games are being played,
fine.
and the political games are being played, not just that. But you may not know, as you're not the big fan that I am, but Josh here can back me up on this. At the WWE pay per view in Toronto in February, the national anthem was booed again. Not our finest moment,
Yep.
but WWE and college game day analyst, former punter for the Indianapolis Colts, Pat McAfee, turned around and said, defended his country and saying that, some unkind words about Canada sucking and, retaliating. And he ended up having to do a big apology for that. But I get his point of view.
Hmm.
It's not a cool thing to do. We kind of deserve that shot. Um, and then I think it just, the whole thing casts a real bad start to whether it's the hockey tournament, a wrestling event, a baseball game, because, the Major League Baseball's in spring training. They're ready to come back. The Jays are going to be out there doing
Jays
stuff.
are looking good in spring
I mean,
training too.
yeah. I mean, Canadian way, a little passive aggressive, a little sarcastic with our elbows up. It could be. And, quite frankly, escalation is bad for everybody, whether it's, just in the trade wars, the economic wars. It's harder for us to get down to the States to see our friends. The dollar's going crazy and all that. And I
Yeah.
live walking distance to the border, so let's hope it doesn't escalate to something really silly. Um,
No, I think
Military wise, but
there are a lot of common sense people, certainly on both sides, and there are a lot of people who, you know, either they have the right information and they have their opinion, or they have the wrong information and they have their opinion.
Mhm.
But I hope that there's a long enough cooling off to realize that, we've been brothers for, since way before right up to the First World War.
Well,
We've
since
supported.
after we burned the White House down in that one incident,
Yeah, that
we've
one.
been pretty cool. But let's hope it doesn't come to shenanigans like that.
That
'Cause
was a
that's not good
British
for anybody.
anyway. That wasn't real Canadian. So
But are my Josh here again? Is people just love adding fuel to the fire? Absolutely, they do, and
yeah,
it's an echo chamber. These Canadian friends are the best. I'm one of them. Josh is an American I talk to daily, thanks to the power of the internet. Out there in North Carolina,
oh,
originally from Boston.
was one of my favorite places to go through.
Yeah,
Traveling in the East Coast League, we got to go through the Carolinas to get down to Florida. That's back in the '60s, but yeah, it's a beautiful country down there.
yeah. I mean, I got to spend a little bit of time in the Northeast, and I really enjoy my time in Florida. I haven't seen a whole lot between the two, but I do know on some of our cruises, I have friends that will fly into the Northeast, or the mid east, and well, that sounded weird. The mid Atlantic area, and drive down, and they just love the drive.
Yeah.
Keith, how's it going, buddy? And yes, Josh, you need to see more than Canada than Montreal or St. John. Both lovely cities, but
BC,
Vancouver,
BC.
yep, Vancouver. We definitely have to organize something like that. Anyways, let's get back to the point
Yep.
here. We've gone way off the reservation. So aside from the embarrassing start due to bad timing and just a countrywide butthurt, what what was it about this series that really caught your eye? We're talking the Four
No,
Nations Cup here.
I'm talking the hockey. The hockey
Hmm.
was fantastic. I've watched every series, being a hockey guy, and I had, I shouldn't say kids, but they were kids that were playing in the series, a number of them over the years. But I've watched every series since '72, right up to this one, and I think, and it's just my own personal feeling, it's probably because the the players are just so much better nowadays. That series, that four series was incredible. I have a hard time sometimes up here hooking up to TV or getting broadcasts, and it I didn't miss a minute,
Hmm.
including the U.S. start to the old time hockey that Canada, the United
Hmm.
States got involved in. That looked
Well,
more
I
like
mean, that game
my
started
day.
off.
But they were good. I mean, there was nothing nerdy. There was, it was just good, hard involvement. But the series itself, I mean, the U.S. is an incredibly talented team. Not that
Hmm.
all the teams weren't, but the U.S. for me, I had in the beginning looking at all the rosters, was an incredible roster of hockey players. They have some fantastic hockey players. And I watched that first Canada US game, and I realized how much emotion, not just physical skill, but emotion and effort on both sides that there was. And then to see the second game, and Canada learned some lessons, and the US had some players hurt, and Canada had some players hurt. Like one of my favorites on there, one of the kids that I had a long time ago, Shea Theodore, to see him go out that early. I mean, he was one of the reasons I really kind of wanted to watch the series, and seeing Mr. Miller on the other side, and it was for me emotionally and intellectually, and to watch the skill level of each and every player and how fast the game moved. Like it just moved and moved and moved, and there was forced effort made to create turnovers. But for hey, I'm sometimes I feel 960 years old, but that was the best hockey series that I have ever seen for total involvement. The U.S. players were really involved. They certainly looking forward to, raise their flag over the Canadians in the hockey rink, even without all the politics. And yet,
Hmm.
you know what? They all leave the rink appreciating what the others have done and what the others can do.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah,
So
for me, that was it.
we got a question from Josh here, and I'm going to let you think about this because I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, which is so you might be amazed. Who's your current favorite player? Now, as far as that goes, I know your philosophy on this, but maybe explain this a little bit and maybe pick out some highlights because I don't think you can pick one, can you?
No. Um, See, I knew three or four players that were in the series. So I mean, I was Canada all the way, but I mean, I've been to practices with NHLs, well, the Canucks specifically. But I mean, I knew Ryan Nugent Hopkins and worked with him and his brother when they were kids, and the Shea Theodores, and I've gotten to meet guys like Mr. Miller, who I was really sorry to see leave Vancouver. Uh, Vancouver's bouncing back pretty good. I wasn't sure how they would be after that,
Well, that
but
that also seemed like there was some locker room issue with that one. I don't want to
yeah,
get.
no question about he's committed to being the best, and he wants everybody in that room to commit his 120% in terms of and in terms of what I know about him. Uh, but you know what? He's he did a good job for the U.S. He's doing a good job in New York too. They're struggling for playoffs. The Canucks are in the a temporary leaning forward driving seat for the playoffs. But um, it's hard sometimes for me to watch NHL games because there's I've been exposed to some of those players, or quite a few of those players
Hmm.
actually, when they were kids,
Hmm.
and to see them go from kids that were obvious, obviously talented, and going to make the next step and the next step, and knowing their families and grandmothers and grandfathers and parents, and it becomes a little hard sometimes to sit down and watch a game. One of the kids that this year I've really hoped more for, because he's just a great kid and a great family, who's Ryan Nugent Hopkins, and
Hmm.
he's a great hockey player. It's it maybe not, this year may not be working out as well as it could be for him, but his contribution away from scoring goals and getting points is pretty solid. But a player that I love to watch, never
Hmm.
had anything to do with him. That's probably why he's so good. Is McDavid. Like,
Right.
to watch his acceleration, his step through, how he moves the puck around, and I know how hard that is to go left, right, and forwards, backwards, north, south, east, west, stick handling all the time to avoid skates and sticks. And yeah, he's just an amazingly gifted hockey player, and
Yes.
I can't understand how the U.S. left him standing alone in front in that series. But
You know what?
I'm
It's
glad they did.
well, absolutely. So, fun fact: Josh worked at James Van Riemsdyck's alma mater. Got to meet him and his brothers, and got to bring them in for
Right.
surprises to the alumni. So that's pretty cool.
That is
Um,
cool.
that is very rad, Josh. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and McDavid sometimes moves like he's a video game. Like it almost seems like he shouldn't be able to do it, but then it really does. And that's just my limited exposure. I don't sit down and watch very many hockey games. If it's on the pub when I'm sitting there, I'll
Yeah,
definitely
I
check
know.
it out and watch it. Um, but that was the modification of the question that I was going to make to that is who do you enjoy watching? Is there
Mhm.
anybody in that series that really stood out and to you? You
Well,
just
Morrison too, amazing. Cale Makar. I mean, I have had some exposure to Cale Makar. Not as a coach, but I've had kids go and play in Brooks where he has played, and I've been to Brooks and watched them played when he was playing in Brooks, and you get to know them and you get to know their character. And I thought, boy, this is going to be a hockey player well worth looking at
mhm.
in the future to see what he can do. I mean, some kids, I mean, any kid that can make it to the NHL has done an outstanding job.
Mhm.
The amount of dedication to do that, but there are players that you focus at. And once I watched Cale, and I talked to his coach in Brooks, I thought, oh God, I'm going to watch this guy. He's going to be awesome. When I
Mhm.
watched Vancouver, I don't know. I might be becoming a defenseman coach. I'm not sure. Is Hughes? He's
Oh, Hughes,
another
Quinn
player.
Hughes.
Yeah, he's amazing to watch. They have such great flow, and they always make plays that you see repeated by others and that are unsuccessful. I
Mhm.
mean, they have certain skills that makes them better players, but I think in all cases they think the game out better than what the the average hockey player would. They have
Mhm.
an idea of where they're going to go and what they're going to do before they need to go and do, and
Mhm.
it's just makes the game so smooth to watch them.
Well, I mean, I think that's an aspect that can have to that,
Yeah, they're I've seen
and
it.
that's the same thing people used to say about these spinning circles.
Yeah, I mean, I've
It's good.
seen a lot of kids go and do amazing things, and
Um,
it's almost the same if you're looking for a characteristic, is they're willing to, without pressing everybody else around them, they're willing to accept the role and have a greater performance every time that they step onto the ice. And they're always learning. Somebody said, "Oh, somebody as good as McDavid, how does he learn?" I know some of the people that have worked with him, and they say every day he tries to learn something different. Every day he tries to learn something new. Every day he tries to find something that will make him and his teammates more successful. I mean, his first few years, I mean, he's a 50, 60 goal scorer, and then all of a sudden, he's a 60, 70 assist player. And the same thing with Gretzky. Gretzky was a phenomenal goal scorer for the first 2/3 of his career, and then he became an incredible playmaker and setting up players. And I had a friend who I actually got to meet Wayne with one of his ex-coaches that I was a friend with. But it seemed to me that if there was a pinhead in a haystack and he was asked to hit the puck or right on the needle, he could. He used to find amazing routes to get it to other players. Accept the pressure and move the puck, and that's what great players do. They always adapt to. It could be something completely different, but they always adapt to something that makes them and their teams better.
I mean, there's under 800 jerseys available in the NHL, and anybody that gets there, I mean, you might be the lowest ranked player in the entire league, but you are still one of the best 800 hockey players in the world.
Yep.
And that's not just counting Canada, because there's a couple million kids playing hockey in Canada. We're talking the US, we're talking all over Europe. Josh has brought up a name from down there in Raleigh, Seth Jarvis. Any notes on him? Any thoughts?
I mean, like I said, anybody at that level is exceptional, and they all have at least one and some of them two skills that makes them exceptional. And it might be an exceptional team support guy. In other words, figuring out where the puck's going to go and cutting that puck off. Now, not a whole lot of people will give you credit if you're not scoring goals. And in those cases, I don't think they're sports fans, but they're not. You have to know how the game functions, and the Stars function 10%. 90% of the game is the guys who aren't stars who do the things that allow the Stars to be able to do what makes them successful.
That's just it.
Seth Jarvis is a good hockey player. So, I don't know a lot about him. I've never had him, but I've watched them.
Yeah. A lot of fans only like to look at only like to look at the outside of the puzzle. They don't see where the rest of the pieces are going.
Yeah, that's
right. So when it's a matter of, he's not scoring all the goals or getting all the assists, but maybe he's the one that caused the turnover.
That's the one.
Maybe he's the one that, finished his check in the boards, rattled somebody good enough that they're off their game, or they've caused that turnover, or they've, caused somebody to be out of position and something else to happen. Let's not forget, hockey has not always been a game of pure finesse. That European style has taken over the NHL in the last 20 years. But when we go back to the, even the late 90s, but, mid 90s for sure, in 80s, you had a role on the line where it's like, you're going out there and you're going to intimidate the shit out of the other side, or you're going out there and if anybody gets close to Mario or Wayne or Steve or Jaromir, you're going to make them pay for getting that close.
You certainly want to make them nervous about repeating it. The game has evolved, and I like the way the game has evolved. There's but hockey being hockey too, there's a small acceptance of, we have stars. We have players, not only just
Hmm.
stars. We need to make other people have a certain amount of respect for the players on your team, the same as they're going to do the same
Hmm.
going back. So, I mean, and respect in hockey is rough play. I mean, there's a certain amount of it in football and a certain amount of
Hmm.
it, yeah, that happens in basketball. I mean, it's
But you
protecting
don't
your own.
often get full on fist fights in either of
No.
those two, and you don't see a
Have
whole
you
lot of
ever
them.
seen a basketball player in a fist fight? Oh my gosh. They shouldn't
Well,
even
no,
be
if
there.
you break your finger, you can't shoot the ball.
That's
And Jeff, we have another one of our American buddies joining us. Jeff is good times. Say you can never go wrong with good forecheckers. I mean, that's a skill. It's
what
got to
you
be
can
there.
never go wrong with a player who forces another player into a position on the ice where he's not effective. If you
Hmm.
touch him at all, if you don't even take away his puck, but if you forced him out of the scoring zone by a hard effort, but I agree with him. That's there's no job that needs to that isn't appreciated when it's done on the ice. Well, like I said, who appreciates somebody who just turns somebody to the outside of the arena that
Hmm.
doesn't even make contact with them? But that player's been turned to the outside of the arena. He has less of an opportunity to make his
Hmm.
team successful, which then all of a sudden now you've got a defenseman making a check and he may not get the puck, but the third guy coming in to support the check may pick up the player and the puck comes out of the ice. So who's the hero? If he hadn't done
Hmm.
that, if it's in your net. So
Yeah.
everybody can be a hero.
Well,
Penalty
most
killers,
people, most
especially.
fans would say it's the guy that got the assist and the goal after that,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
the goalie that stopped it. But there's I don't I've always found it to be an underrated role to be the one that caused that. You don't get a lot of credit on the because you're the third man that touched the puck, so you're not getting that assist credit either.
Hmm.
Um, it is something. It's a rough game. Even I'm going to use the
Continuously
word
thinking.
tamed as it is lately, but I mean it's just that European style.
Uh,
If you want to hear about it, go watch an old Don Cherry Rock'em Sock'em tape because Don had no problem
yeah.
giving his critiques on the difference between the North American style, shall we say, and the European style and the differences there back in the day. I'm sure if you asked him today, he would still tell you the same thing, except I think Don's pretty much out of the public eye at this point. He
Yeah.
may have outgrown his era.
Yeah, a little bit. So,
Um, so the Four Nations Cup.
yes.
It was a unique thing this year because this replaced the traditional NHL All Star game.
Yes. Thank you.
How did that sit with you? To me, the All
It,
Star game was always you felt bad for the goaltenders because it's like shit they're going to be shooting the lights out all night long. It was
yeah.
always a high scoring game.
Hmm.
Um, it it wasn't even so much lopsided. I mean, there were games that we were getting dozens of goals,
Yeah.
and these poor, like the top six goalies in the league, um, are just they got a goals against average that would get them kicked out of minor hockey
Hmm.
in that one game. So out of this round robin tournament, I think it was an interesting four nations to pick for this. God knows there's many in there. Um, that could be swapped around. Obviously, Canada and the U.S. are always going to have that natural rivalry,
Hmm.
um, just because it's what we do
Yep.
hockey wise. But picking Finland and Sweden over some of the other European nations was interesting. How do you feel about this as an adaptation for it? Jeff here thought it was awesome. I think he
Yeah.
thought it gave a big boost to hockey. What say you on this, Doug?
Oh, I agree. Like I've never seen better hockey, and I think it's going to step forward. I mean, I have some NHL friends, and I have some NHL executive type people, and I know there have been rumors, and they kind of like this series, and they're talking about making it a 6-team series
Hmm.
next time, which would probably include somebody like Czechoslovakia
Yeah,
and
the Czech Republic.
Leon Draisaitl, and some other Germans. I don't know. Yeah,
Well, I
uh,
mean,
but
the
they're
Russians have a presence too, still, right?
oh,
I
they
mean,
have a
yeah,
huge presence, but so much is there. There we go. Things to ruin, whatever. Yeah, there's so
yeah.
much political, ramifications for inviting. I mean, invite Russian hockey players and call them like they do in the Olympics something else.
Hmm.
But calling them a Russian team, it just doesn't seem to be politically an astute thing to
Yeah,
do.
the social climate of that. I mean, Russia was. We went through the Cold War doing this as well. I just think it's the internet may have ruined it for everybody because now we are a lot more vocal and we can tell everybody about it.
Hmm.
That not just that, but also the fact that TV is without much difficulty a fairly global presence.
Yeah.
Um, so this 4-team round robin format's a win for you. It sounds like it's a win for Jeff as well. I thought it was fantastic. I wasn't sure what was going on with it until I looked it up. And I'm like, oh, that is a really cool way to do this because it just didn't seem effective as a showcase anymore. And it does give the guys a little bit of extra time off mid-season. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, there's some guys that are still out there playing, but the rest of the team can just do what they need to do, catch a break, catch their breath, and come
Yeah.
back to it.
Well,
So,
the NHL was having a difficult time. I mean, none of the players want to go there and get hurt. They're in the middle of the season and it's
mm-hmm,
coming up to close to playoff times or rushes for playoff times. I mean, for me, just watching the skills competition, well, that was the most competitive that they got because
mm-hmm,
they were competing without physically having to compete against each
mm-hmm,
other. In other words, they were competing to be the best that they could be so that they could be something better. The game, I if you want to go out to, well, this is a nasty thing to say, but you know what? You could go out to the rink and or out to the lake and watch the kids play shinny hockey because you know there's it just lacked the intensity
mm-hmm,
of high performance. And NHL players are high performance athletes. Well,
mm-hmm,
every professional athlete is. They're high performance, and there have been more than well aware that that they can jeopardize both their team and themselves in terms of career in terms of playing just a fun game,
mm-hmm.
and that's what it was, an entertainment, or trying to make it as entertaining as they could. But if the NHL wanted to turn the NHL All-Star Weekend into a fan phenomena, they did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think as far as the physicality went, that the most physical game that seemed to be was that Canada US, that first game in the round robin, and the
Well,
Canadians pissed off the Americans, and it showed. Um, so that
yeah,
was aside from that start of that game, it definitely seemed everybody buckled down. It's like, okay, so we don't need to go home with somebody injured. The last thing anybody wants to do in an
yeah,
all-star type game is to, blow a knee. God help, it's something worse like a torn shoulder or uh, you know a an Achilles, like something that would really screw up the rest of the season.
yeah.
I think once they got past the initial, you know, fu, fu, no fu, it seemed to settle down, and everybody's like, okay, hold on, I'm not being paid extra for this. I have half a season left to go. We have a shot at the playoffs. We are top of the league at the playoff. We are gunning for a playoff spot, whatever whatever mentality that particular player for that particular team coming out of it was, once they got over the initial outrage, it seemed to settle down to me.
But it was a very physical series. It
Mm-hmm.
really was. The players put 100% effort into it because there was something in it. Nobody was crazy other than a couple of scuffles, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean they put as much physical effort into playing as they would in making their playoffs. You know, I just nobody was bumping and saying I'm sorry, and nobody was sort of rubbing out right from the get go. And I mean, Finland just crashed everybody. It was it was well worth watching for me, and that's just old hockey speaking.
I haven't seen any complaints about it being a waste of time. And sometimes you see that in all-star games, and it's not just NHL. You see it in most all-star games where it's like, okay, they came in, they shot the lights out,
Yeah,
it wasn't the same type of all-star game this year, and I think it's a phenomenal idea. If they can structure it right, give everybody a bit of a breather, except for, each
yeah.
team may have to sacrifice one or two guys for, not getting that extra break, but it gives the rest of the team going back into the regular season play a time to sit down and go, okay, where are we up to this point? What do we need to do to get to the playoffs, or what do we need to do to get through the playoffs, and
Because
sort of
that's their
make that.
career.
Yeah.
That game was pride. That series was pride, and they put everything. I
Mm-hmm.
think most all of the players. I didn't really notice any player who didn't on whatever country they were playing. They put their pride into it.
Mm-hmm.
Now coming back, it's their careers. It's
Mm-hmm.
playoffs. It's playoff money. It's playoff prestige. It's the chance to be the world's best hockey team on
Mm-hmm.
your team. And but going back to the series again, I mean, you look at how hard and how many injuries Team USA had. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
had they been injury free, had Canada been injury free, could it have been a better game? Oh God, I don't think so. Not a better one than I've seen, but maybe it might have been. But they a lot of those players got hurt there because of there was that pride attached to themselves, and I think more themselves wanting to be the best, known to be the best hockey team in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from a different prospect, from an all-star scenario instead of a team building scenario for the NHL team. So, but
And this is a, I don't want to say a promotional tool for the NHL, but it is an NHL game. This
mhm.
is not like, the World Cup of Hockey or the Olympics where it's,
Yep.
they're pulling players from, different leagues other than just the NHL.
Mhm.
But no matter, you put international hockey out there, you put national team hockey out there, Canada's got a big target on their back. Period.
Oh, yeah.
We are not the only ones that have, because Lord knows, the Czechs and the Russians and the Finns and the Swedes have all, gone out there and had phenomenal games. And I think the US gets discounted a lot in national team level play, but they're
Oh,
not to be messed with either.
that's
And
a
they haven't been
mistake
for a
to do
while.
that.
It's just some
Yeah.
sort of, shouldn't you be playing football mentality to it? And it's dangerous for teams to go in thinking that way, in my opinion,
In
rather
my
than
opinion, sorry, Matt.
go ahead.
I didn't. I have to jump in because the train will go through my thought and I'll forget what it is. In my team, or in my estimation, the U.S. has probably. I mean, we have a broader base development program,
Mm-hmm.
but in the United States, they have that USA hockey program to develop exceptional athletes or exceptional hockey players. That is, I mean, the players coming out of the states nowadays are phenomenal.
Mhm.
I mean, that USA national, I think they've got an under 17 and an under 20, and I probably would think that they probably have other programs, but that's a great program. It's just not as available to all U.S. hockey players as our junior development program. But I
Mhm.
mean, we have a wrath of thousands of junior hockey players in Canada, and they really focus on the top 50 players, or even maybe lower numbers than that, in their country, and they bring them to teams to play all year round, and then and schedule those teams to play against the 17s. Will play against mostly 20-year-old teams or college teams, and I've always been a big favorite of that since I went to Europe and was in the tournament in Czechoslovakia,
Mhm.
because I spent most of my daytime when the kids were out doing other things, running around looking at the Czech minor hockey program.
Mhm.
And they used to bring the best Czech hockey players from all over the country to Prague every weekend
Mhm.
for special development camps. I don't know if it's changed, but you get a lot of the best program players from the U.S. and the European countries that come to Canada to play junior A hockey, and that whole structure is changing now. There's the U.S. College program has been open to major junior hockey players as of this year. We used to have a structure. If you wanted to go to college, you went to teams like the BC Junior Hockey League or the
Mhm.
Alberta Hockey League, or, you know, those kids were specifically focused at trying to get scholarships to U.S.
Mhm.
schools. Where the kids who were more, can I get to a career sooner, went, basically major junior hockey, the CHL, Western Hockey League, Ontario, and Quebec leagues. Now, with those players having eligibility to go to the States, it kind of streamlines. There'll be less choices for kids at 16 to try to decide whether I'm going NHL or whether I'm going college. They can stream themselves right to the high end development Canadian Junior Hockey League, and still keep their college eligibility. And this is a new thing, and I think over the next 3 or 4 years, there's going to be a lot of changes in terms of structures. Like a lot of kids that I had known that were exceptional hockey players in their days, like the Johnsons and Koreas, and those kids, they wanted to pursue the best hockey they could with
Mhm.
college as an idea. Now they can go to the Western Hockey League or the Canadian Junior A Hockey Leagues and not have to worry about losing that opportunity to get school. So the schools, I'm assuming, will probably try to do more and more recruiting out of the Western Hockey League, the Quebec League, the Ontario League, and more players will now, with exceptional abilities, will try to get to those leagues.
Mhm.
Um, it's it's new, but I had players back in my day like John LaFontaine, Pat LaFontaine's brother, is an exceptional hockey player. Played for me in Nanaimo, but he was an exceptional student. But he chose to come. His brother went to Quebec, and he
Mhm.
came to the Western Hockey League. I don't know whether they knew what the structure was or the structure wasn't, but as soon as he played a game in the Western Hockey League, he was ineligible to go to U.S. college, where he'd have been a phenomenal college hockey player.
Mhm.
His brother went to Quebec and went right to the NHL, but
Right.
those
That worked out okay for him.
that worked out okay for him. But I do know that the LaFontaines tried for years to try and, or for quite a
Mhm.
while, I don't know, years, to get his eligibility back, because he was a student,
Mhm.
and a good hockey player. And they never did. Now that's not going to happen. You can go to either league. You can go to BC Junior Hockey League, or you can go to the Western Hockey League's Vancouver Giants and still have eligibility to go to a U.S. college, let
See, now
alone Canadian colleges.
that's one of the things that always seemed lacking to me is there's that middle step of education that hockey didn't seem to have the same way the NCAA provided for the football and basketball players down south. It
Yeah.
seemed like you could either go to university or you could keep hammering away at the hockey and hopefully you get a career and you get a decent enough paycheck out of it that life will work for you. Like it seemed like a gap. Is that just me not seeing
No,
it? Is that
that's the way it was.
yeah?
You had to make a choice at 16.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Which is
uh,
2 years before, or at least a year and a half before most kids would even be
before the
thinking about
draft,
graduating at
because the
17 and a
draft.
half.
That's right.
You finish high school up here, or
Yep.
almost 18, depending on when you're, that's that 17, 18 year is, usually the end of high school up here, leading into going to college. And then you're looking at your draft at 16.
Yep.
And then you're
Well,
waving that in front of a 16-year-old kid going, well, you could come over here and make a bunch of money, or you could go to school.
Matt, it's 2
And
years younger. It's 14.
oh my God, 14.
Draft that the kids are exposed to is the Bantam draft,
Mm-hmm.
where you are drafted by the Western by the Canadian Junior A hockey teams.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you make that choice to go there, you're ineligible for college hockey in the States. One
Yeah,
game
see, that's
at
that
14. All of that now goes away. And then you had to, if you made the choice to stay and not go to the Western Hockey League and you played junior A hockey, even if you were capable of playing there at what is and is a lower step of hockey, and were exceptional there, some kids, actually quite a few kids, did get scholarships to go to the
Mhm.
States. But that was at 16. Now you're a McDavid.
Mhm.
I would imagine he had to make this choice. At 16, do you stay and play in Orillia, Ontario, or do you go to the Ontario Hockey League with the expectations of that you might make it to the NHL? He
Mhm.
made a good decision.
Yeah, I mean
But I mean,
that has clearly
that's
worked
what
out for him.
every kid has in front of him.
And
Like, what do I do? And then
for
you go,
every
sorry,
McDavid or LaFontaine that's out there that
yeah,
choice
or Paul
worked out
Korea,
for them. There's
yeah,
or Paul Korea. There's examples of that, but there's
uh-huh.
got to be dozens of kids who make the same choice, and they just it's one of those things where they don't make the roster cut or they get hurt, and it just doesn't.
Matt, you're talking about the success rate, even with all of them being considered elite hockey players, is
Mhm.
probably less than 10%
Yeah.
for them to get to where they want to go. And I mean, it's like 2% to get to where, well, much less. You have 100,000 kids playing hockey, and you'll be lucky to see 3 or 4 of them get to the NHL. That's
Well, I mean,
how
that's just
high
it.
the
I mean, it's
percentages
right
are.
now, and I've pulled this up, and I've done this math before years ago. Um, uh, there's approximately 436,000 youth hockey players in Canada right now. There's under 800 jerseys in the NHL available every
Yep.
season.
And a lot of those NHL hockey players are there for years. So that
They're
jersey
there
doesn't
for years,
open up
and
every
the
year.
NHL is not only pulling Canadian players.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
mean
Yep.
you got it's a tough choice, and I would imagine that the choice to go, you know what, I'm going to do the college route. I got a scholarship from I'm going to pull Vermont out of my hat because I know you played for them. It's like I'm going to go play. Then there's 4 years of prime hockey, youth. I guess. I mean, you have your body is in favor. It bounces back. It recovers. It builds. So that there's 4 years that you could be just killing it in the NCAA
Yeah.
as a hockey player. That shit, I just wasted 4 really good money making years in the NHL,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. It seems to be a really weird catch 22 that a lot of athletes have to
I
consider, and they're 14 years old.
making their first choice. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of to take nothing away from Canadian Junior A hockey or junior hockey, other than major junior. A lot of players got scholarships, and
Hmm.
a lot of players got fantastic occupations, and
Hmm.
doctors and lawyers and accountants and architects, and
Hmm.
they finished their 4 years there and walked into a great job and had a great life.
Hmm.
And there's lots of those kids that showed the NHL talent that were gone usually within a couple of years.
Hmm.
They never graduated, but NHL money and an NHL career was part of the things or the opportunity that dropped into their lap, and they got
Yeah.
it and they did it. So, what's the hard part to say is over the years as a coach at both major junior hockey and as an owner and coach at the junior level in BC here, it was incredibly stressful for me when a kid came to me. I didn't worry about him if he didn't come to me. Like,
Hmm.
he's making his own choices, his parents are making their own choices. But if they come to me and said, "Coach, what should I do?"
Ooh.
Lots of them did. There's lots of advice handed out, and I'm hoping that a good percentage of it was good for them.
Hmm.
But yeah, the coach, uh, if he picks the wrong one for them, I always felt like, oh my God, I'd
Oh
take a
God,
look at
yeah.
that player 3 or 4 years down the road and go, oh God, I should have told him instead of. And
Hmm.
that that's kind of one of the
Yeah,
things that
that's a
weighed
hell of a
on me.
burden to be have. I mean, you could advise them, go take the contract, take the money, they get up there, and in their first game they get let's say they blow their Achilles out and they're never the same player again.
Hmm.
Or, do you tell them not? Yeah, that's a hell of a burden to have laid on you, even if it works out.
Hmm.
Uh, Even if they end up being a doctor, a lawyer, a superstar agent on the other side, because it's like, get your education first. It's like, well, I would have had 4 good years, but I mean, let's be honest here. With no matter what you do, no matter what big league you're headed for, how many college football teams are there in the U.S. right now? How many NFL jerseys are available every year? I mean, there's lots of guys that did get the education, come out the other side, and hopefully they have something for it. And there's thousands and thousands of stories of success on the field, off the field, and then not so much on both.
Yeah.
It's
Well, it
that's a
was.
hell of a burden to have in somebody's hands. But at the same time, it's better to seek the advice rather than sitting there at let's say 16 years old going, I got to make a huge choice, I have nobody else to talk to.
Mhm.
We don't know what the it could be that there's nobody at home
Yep.
that will do that. It could be that the people at home are, those parents that are, you must be in the NHL, you must be in the NFL, you must bring home this giant ring, you must. And that's stress on the other side that when you're making that kind of a life decision, you don't necessarily want, especially since you're pretty sure what their answer is going to be anyways.
Yep.
You need that devil's advocate. You need a differing opinion. Um,
I know. Almost always, I would lead with education. And
mhm,
when I first got into junior hockey, the Canadian major junior hockey had no education program. That's how long ago I was there.
mhm,
But they brought in an education program because of the decision making, so that if a player wasn't going to make it to pro hockey, that he did have the opportunity to get a year's worth of tuition paid for at a Canadian
mhm.
university, because he couldn't go to a U.S. university. He was
Right.
ineligible. He was considered. So I mean, all along the line, they try to make adjustments, but at that, to try and get that education package, you had to have signed up for it in the
Mhm.
beginning. Like there was no going to get one after you've been there a year and say, oh, well, I want the education package now. So again, that was the decision. Take it, take it. Like if you don't make it, you can go to a Canadian university and you can have part of it at least paid for. And Canadian universities are a lot less expensive than what the U.S. universities. Most U.S.
And that's saying something, because I know people with student loan debt.
Yeah. Yep.
And,
A U.S. university, you talk about student debt in the United States.
it's ridiculous.
Even an average school seems to me, from what I've been hearing, is going to cost you $30,000 to $40,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're going to a good one like an Ivy League school and you don't have a scholarship, it's going to cost you 80 to 100 and more.
And that's one of the reasons there's NIL that they have down in the NAACP, or no, that's a different organization. The NCAA it is a good thing, just over the fact that some of these college kids are a lot of money is being made off their name and they're not seeing a dime for it, but it helps with the education. Like any step forward you can get to get help with the education, be it scholarship or some sort of discount because you were playing and bringing in this money, or getting paid to do it a little bit. I don't know exactly how the NIL deal works, but get the education and do that, because there's so many stories of, I was 20 years old, they backed up the Brinks truck, what was I supposed to do? From rehab or a jail cell. And then there's also guys that are like, I had the money, I spent the money, I blew out my knee. And then there's those weird stories as well. Do you remember, for those of you that have just joined us for this today, as we wrap this up, there is one story that I found interesting about choosing to play in the major juniors or go to university. Now, for those of you that are listening to us, go on the Apple or the Spotify or even YouTube, go back and find the episode talking to Jeff Courtnall from season 1. I asked Jeff if there was ever a thought for him to go to college or to continue playing pro. Do you remember his answer?
Do I?
Do you?
Yeah, there was a thought, but I mean, he was.
Do you remember the reason he said he chose to not go to UBC?
No.
Because if he went to play major juniors, he'd get to play with his brother Russ.
Oh, that's right too. Russ.
So, and sometimes there is just that. It's like you never know if you're going to be able to get the opportunity to play with your best friend or your brother like that.
In Jeff's case, he was making a choice to stay in major junior hockey, or whether he had an opportunity to move to minor pro hockey, or even, might have even made the NHL. And he chose to stay behind a year because his brother had been listed by the Victoria Cougars and he would be playing with the Cougars. Russ was an exceptional minor hockey player. But now I do remember. Yes.
Yeah. So I remember his answer to that when I asked him specifically. He told me I was looking at going to UBC, and I took the year because it would give me the opportunity to play with my brother. There are very, very few cases like where, family gets to play together on the same team. Like the one major notable exception, especially around these parts of the Sedin twins. But you don't often see that. The Tkachuk brothers don't get to play together all that often. Maybe in an all-star game, especially with the way it was this year. But I mean, I don't think Russ and Jeff played with each other in the NHL when they were.
Yeah, they played in Vancouver with each other.
Oh, was Russ here at the same time?
Yes.
Okay, I don't remember that because it clearly wasn't for too terrible.
I think it was only a year, and then Jeff was. He went back to St. Louis. I think he opted out or took a free agent contract to go to St. Louis. Good choice, boy. His last couple of years in St. Louis were phenomenal.
Well,
I know. I watch all my kids.
Yes, you do. And then you have that bad habit of watching all of them. And this goes back to Josh's question earlier about your favorite player. You have a hard time choosing between kids.
Oh yeah,
Um,
my favorite player, coming out of junior going into the NHL was Jeff Courtnall. Yeah,
yes,
because I
you
saw the
always talk so
struggles.
highly about him.
I saw the struggles that he went through, and I uh, I was a little hard on him, to be perfectly honest, but I wanted to make sure that he got every opportunity that he needed to get. I even let him go to the Cougars right in the middle of our playoff season. So
Well, it worked out for him.
it
He
worked
spent
out for him.
he
We
spent
lost the series.
well, I mean, Jeff spent 17 years in the show too. So I
He
mean,
did.
whatever you
He
did, whatever
earned every
stepping
one of them.
stones.
He earned
Yep.
every one of them from the time he put on skates.
Yep. But you can people can go back and check that out in the archive. We will have some more guests. I have reached out to a few people, so we can keep if we could keep this regular back on the weekly schedule for a little while. I do have. I know it. You're not the only one, except much like you, I'm now experiencing the empty nest syndrome, so I don't have to drive children around as often as I was up until a few weeks ago. So my schedule's open. We'll sort this out. We'll try to get this back on the regular, keep a season here going. And one of the other things before we go that I want to tease for a future episode, you spent a weekend down here last spring.
Mm-hmm.
And in that weekend, you binge watched 3 seasons of a very
Yes.
special show that I told you you would love.
Because I can't get the program up here, so
Just,
yeah.
just
Yeah.
announced
Oh,
season
I
4.
love them. I'd never heard anything about it. And everybody said I'm such a weird coach, and you said, "Well, you have another weird coach."
Yeah.
And when you
And you
told
know
me,
what? You
I
both,
sat down and watched that. It was phenomenal.
and you also rocked a pretty weird mustache for many years. And we're talking about Ted Lasso. So I sat Dad
Yes.
down one night. He was here a day early. I said, I want you to watch the first episode of this. We watched 3 or 4 episodes. I went to bed. You stayed up and finished the entire season.
Yeah, it was one right after another.
And
I don't
then
know
we
how
managed to
many
hammer through
hours.
the next couple of seasons of Ted Lasso. And yes, as Sarah is telling us, season 4 is coming. You need to come down so we can all watch together.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I remember we'll get into this on another episode. We'll spend a good while talking about this, but there were points in Ted's delivery and style. And of course, Ted is, an American football coach that gets sent to the UK to coach proper football, soccer.
To fail at proper.
Oh yeah, but his coaching style, much like yours, of support the player and stay positive and believe, kind of worked out for him. But there was just certain moments in there where I saw your eyes light up, going, "I've never heard it put that way before, but that's exactly it." The most notable one, it was be a goldfish.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll get into that. We'll get into some more guests. We'll get into some goings on because we are fast approaching the NHL playoffs, and headaches, hassles, horse shit, and shenanigans are well on their way. We're gonna see good, the bad, and the ugly of all sorts of different styles of hockey. Glad we were able to sort this out and get this started again. It's I like it. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed your thoughts on all of this, and just sort of kicking you off on a little rant and letting you go for a while.
Hey, all I've got to say is be great because you can.